Good evening, colleagues.
Evening, ma'am.
How are you, colleagues?
Fine, and you?
I'm well, thank you. It was a wonderful day. We had a bit of rain. I was driving from Pretoria to Polokwane, rain all the way until the ranch. And I see we got a bit of showers here, something that's positive and good to appreciate. Without any waste of time, you know, sometimes people say, let's not start, let's wait for people. But we are 22 in here and we are the people. I just want to take a moment to say we are ready and we are starting. Those who are still cooking will join us later. I'm just going to request that each of our speakers, just for the first few seconds, maybe if you don't mind, just if you don't mind, put on your video so we can see that we are talking to a human being and not to AI. I'm going to do the same, and immediately I am done, I'm going to let the first speaker, Professor Munjezi, to just give us an opening and welcome. My name is Matlo Muloto. I am the academic section head in the Department of Applied Languages in Humanities, Tshwane University of Technology, and I'm based at the Polokwane campus. Well, I'll give the remarks after the opening by Prof. Munjezi. Prof. Munjezi, are you in the house? Before you do that, let people see my face. Are you able to see my face? Take the glasses off.
Yes, we can see you.
I'm going to switch this
We
now
did not
off.
see you without the glasses.
Okay. Prof. Mkwena, are you able to see the lady now?
Awesome, awesome, great.
Okay. Thank you, colleagues. Let me close this and welcome Professor Munjezi to just give us a word of opening and welcome so that we feel home before we proceed with this interesting and necessary discussion. Professor Munjezi, we're all yours.
Thank you, Ms. Muloto, for the opportunity. Welcome, colleagues, for this opportunity that Saapam Limpopo. Unfortunately, my video is not working. I was trying to fix it earlier. Unfortunately, I failed. But nevertheless, welcome to this event that we thought as a chapter of Saapam in Limpopo that we need to create these constant interactions that we must talk to each other on a regular basis on issues that affect us as a province. Fortunately, for us as a province, we've got 3 resident universities, let me say 4, the University of Limpopo, University of Venda, China University of Technology, and we've got UNISA. And we thought we must, together with our practitioners, those that are in government and members of the public, come together, have this constant interaction on issues that affect us, like gender-based violence. It affects us all. And there's no one who can say has never been affected by this phenomenon. So we thought we must come together, and we'll also meet in future, talk about other issues that affect us on a regular basis. So it's also, we've invited also our students to join us so that we can also be able to talk about these issues that affect us. We say you are welcome. We're going to have speakers that are going to the CEO of the Gender Commission, as well as other panelists who have been invited to come and assist him to talk to this issue. Welcome all, and let's enjoy and engage on this topic. Thank you very much. Welcome. The event is officially open. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Mujezi, for your words of welcome. We now know we are comfortable. I just want to add and say, we, as one of the house rules, we know this is family time. We know that this is your time, but we request that where possible, just try and move where we may not be able to have the background noise, although we understand the circumstances. Thank you, Prof. Munjezi. Indeed, you are right that this particular issue and others that we will engage with in future are societal problems. These are not Saapam problems. These are not the people in the Commission of Gender Equality as problem. These are issues that affect all of us, and maybe one one of the reason is that I'm in applied languages, but here I am today because this is one of the issues that I also take interest in. Having said that, I also would just want to acknowledge that Saapam is a very progressive movement. You are the mouthpiece of the people, and we really appreciate the kind of work that you do. This kind of work cannot go unnoticed. For that, we are grateful for your work and for your contribution. Having said that, I'm going to now request Professor Litoko to just give us the purpose of this seminar. And Professor Litoko is a Saapam Limpopo Chapter Deputy Secretary attached to the University of Limpopo. Prof, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much. Let me see. I've been told that if you can look at the messages there, we are requested by the technical team that we put our video on throughout when we are talking, as we are streaming live on YouTube and Facebook. So I'll try my best, although I'm in the house and teaching, but I'll put my video on. Colleagues, my job is very, very easy. It's about the purpose of this session this evening. And I want to emphasize that I looked at the motto for Saapam, and it was very, very interesting. It's about public service excellence through scholarship and research. I got fascinated because today's session is part of scholarship, in the sense that we are bringing in a practitioner amongst us who is on the ground dealing with issues related to gender equality in South Africa, as it were. So for us as Saapam, we see it as part of enhancing the excellence that the organization is all about. So our purpose is simple, is to make sure that we bridge the gap between the theory that we teach and the theories that we always talk about, and now the practitioner experience. That is why we have got the CEO of the Commission for Gender Equality, who's going to address us today. So our purpose is to ensure that we bridge the gap between theory and practice, and sometimes also to hear the voice of those who are at the coalface of what happens in terms of gender violence. They call it GBV and femicide and all issues that are linked to women in the country. And to add on Prof. Munjezi's words, we also have got a panel of practitioners and academics who are also going to be engaging with us in this session. And we will then be able to take home the issue of what is happening in practice from this session today. So with those few words, colleagues, I really would like to thank you, Ms. Muloto for taking us through this session with the kind of expertise you are displaying. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. Litoko, for just giving us the direction on why this day and why this moment. So I just want to appreciate that you have actually indicated that in the motto of Saapam, that the issues relating to scholarship and research are at the core of this motto. And hence we have this evening a panelist and the guest speaker to really unpack the issues relating to gender-based violence and to just get away with or clarify some of these myths that are there. And I'm just glad that this panel, the panelists who are here, are people, some of them who have done research in relation to this issue. They are knowledgeable, hence they have found space in this program. Now I'm going to just indicate to you that just for you to be able to follow, from now at 6:45, we're going to have the speaker until around 7:30. And between 7:35 and 5 minutes past 8, it will be the engagements with the panelists. So I'm going to give from 7:30 the panel to just reflect on what the speaker would have said, and their engagement will be from 8:30 to 5 minutes past 8, and from 8:05 until 8:25, I'm going to give the opportunity to all of you, to all of us, the audience, to be able to engage with the presentation and the guest speaker. Now I'm going to, it is now 18:42. We are right on time. I'm going to give this opportunity to Dr. Mohokong, who is attached to the Premier Office of the Premier Limpopo Province, to introduce to us the speaker. Dr. Mohokong, the platform is yours.
Thank you, Madam Program Director. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My role is quite straightforward and simple. I'm going to introduce our keynote speaker, a man who has done quite a lot of work in terms of research and practice on issues pertaining to gender justice. And he's very fit for the purpose of this particular engagement today. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce to you Dr. Mohlatlego Dennis Matotoka, who is a seasoned legal expert and the current Chief Executive Officer of the Commission for Gender Equality, CGE, with an extensive background in law, public administration, and gender equality. He has become a key leader in driving legal reform and advancing gender justice in South Africa. Dr. Matotoka holds a Doctor of Laws degree from the University of Limpopo, where he has also completed his Master of Laws LLM and Bachelor of Laws LLB. As CEO of CGE, Dr. Matotoka has led numerous transformative initiatives, focusing on improving audit outcomes, reducing wasteful expenditure, and developing the Commission's business model to better serve its mandate of promoting gender equality. Under his leadership, the CGE has strengthened its operational transparency, accountability, and impact on critical social issues, particularly in combating gender-based violence and femicide. Dr. Matotoka's legal career spans over a decade, with significant experience in various leadership roles, including practicing attorney, senior legal researcher, and head of legal services at CGE. His expertise covers a wide array of legal fields, from socioeconomic rights and constitutional law to corporate governance and gender-sensitive legal frameworks. He has been actively involved in legislative reform, policy development, and public engagement aimed at advancing gender justice in South Africa. A published academic and thought leader, Dr. Matotoka. He has presented research at national and international conferences, authored several articles, and contributed to important publications on gender equality, legal reform, and socioeconomic rights. He is also a respected mentor, guiding the next generation of legal professionals and public administrators. Dr. Matotoka's leadership has made a lasting impact on the CGE, fostering a culture of inclusivity, transparency, and legal rigor in addressing complex social issues. His deep commitment to human rights, gender equality, and the rule of law continues to shape the trajectory of gender justice in South Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, let us give our guest, Dr. Matotoka, a virtual round of applause as he ascends this virtual podium. Let us give him a round of applause. Thank you, Madam Program Director, and all the best to our guest speaker, Dr. Matotoka. Thank you.
Program Director, thank you so much. Fellow panelists, students, professors who are here, and members of the public in general who are following us on this important discourse that we're having tonight. You know, when we started our first parliament in 1994, the democratic government, the first president indicated something very profound pertaining to inclusivity. He indicated that we cannot talk about or celebrate freedom in the country as long as women are not emancipated through all forms of oppressions that they face in society. And I want to believe that he said that statement because of what we know has been the norm in the past, that women in the main have been subjected to all forms of oppressions. Oppressions in terms of the oppression in terms of gender, oppression in terms of class, and oppression in terms of race as well. And we have seen that also manifesting in the new democratic dispensation, where we still see that women in the main are discriminated against. But equally so, we acknowledge that not just women, but the marginalized groups, the vulnerable persons, men themselves in some areas, they equally experience some form of discrimination that is perpetuated by some of the patriarchal views that we do in society. Now, I'll be delivering this presentation against the backdrop of a situation in the country that we have now officially referred to it as a pandemic, and that is gender-based violence and femicide. We present this, we have this discussion this evening, knowing very well that we have women, we have men who are currently before courts, we have women and children, persons with disability that are currently fighting for their lives in hospitals because of this pandemic that we're referring to. As early as 2 weeks back in the Eastern Cape, we witnessed a matter of a mother who killed a perpetrator who allegedly was raping a 6-year-old. And the perpetrator was at the age of 64. And the lady is currently incarcerated, where there are discussions currently taking place whether she should be charged or not. And we are delivering this presentation this evening knowing very well that we have activists that have reported matters around gender-based violence and femicide that were failed by the system and their lives were taken because we don't have adequate witness protection. And equally, I'm delivering this presentation knowing very well that we have activists who have been murdered, stabbed multiple times, 21 times in particular, because of their sexual orientation in the country. And it is important that I lay that background because what we are about to discuss here, gender-based violence and femicide, is not a theoretical issue. It's a practical challenge that affects all of us in this platform and those that are watching. Because whether it happens to you or somebody within your area, the reality is that you are affected by the manner in which this outrageous violence is taking place in society. Now, my presentation will be as follows. I will lay the background. I will reflect on the committee CEDAW around its concerns around gender-based violence in South Africa. I will reflect also on regional and international instruments, as well as the domestic instruments that give life to gender-based violence regulation across continents and countries. And we'll have a quick diagnosis of existing supporting structures in the country. How effective are those? We would look at some of the key factors that contribute towards cases not being rolled before courts. And we'll also look at those cases that set the tone around where we are as a country in as far as gender-based violence is concerned. Now, we know that by its very nature, gender-based violence, it has its long, complex history in South Africa, informed by patriarchal attitudes, patriarchal views towards vulnerable groups. Now, if you had a chance to look at the study that was done by the HSRC around the gender-based violence in South Africa, you will have observed that some of the patriarchal attitudes towards vulnerable groups include perceptions that men in this day and age hold towards women, wherein there is a general view or a strong view to the effect that when you marry a woman, you literally own that person. A view that says if you want to have a sexual intercourse with this lady, whether she says yes or no, she has no choice, but you are entitled to do so by virtue of marriage. And the patriarchal attitude also that women themselves hold to the effect that their sole responsibility is confined to household, but they are not supposed to be doing anything other than that. Patriarchal attitudes where women themselves out of their study attest to the effect that being assaulted by a partner or a husband is a way of showing discipline, and some of them do approve of that. So those patriarchal stereotype views, they still exist in society, and they contribute significantly towards gender-based violence and femicide. But I have a challenge, colleagues, because when we look at vulnerable persons, I view vulnerable persons as any person who may be susceptible to any form of gender-based violence and femicide, irrespective of your age, irrespective of your sexual orientation, you are likely to be subjected to gender-based violence and femicide. Now we look at what the legislation says. The legislation says to us a vulnerable person is defined as a child or a person who is mentally disabled, or a female under the age of 25 receiving certain education and training, or someone being cared for at a shelter in a facility that provides services to victims of crime. And the Act seems to also expand this definition by saying it includes even individuals with physical and intellectual disabilities, as well as those persons of the age of 60 and above who are receiving services at a community care or living with specific residences and facilities. But when we look at the number of definitions that are there around gender-based violence, the general ones seem to accept that it is violence that is directed at a person because of their gender. It seems to be common when you look at what the European Commission has defined it as well as some of the scholars. They seem to hammer on the fact that it is a harmful, targeted act towards a specific group on the basis of gender. Now, if we accept that definition, you will then appreciate that we cannot confine vulnerable persons for the purposes of gender-based violence as persons who or females that are just under the age of 25 receiving certain services at the social development, for example. A 26-year-old is vulnerable, a 30-year-old is vulnerable, irrespective of their age, gender, sexual orientation, and gender identity. These colleagues or persons, they qualify as vulnerable persons because violence of this nature doesn't have a face, doesn't have an age, but we know that in the main is targeting vulnerable groups. Now, the UN Women has indicated that 1 in 3 women experience gender-based violence in society. The study that I was referring to earlier on, which is conducted by the HSRC, suggests that at least 40% of women in the country, in South Africa, have experienced a form of gender-based violence. And these statistics, colleagues, then they call for a need to have policy changes, right? The policy changes requires us to look at international instruments. These international instruments include, amongst others, the CEDAW, which mandates state parties to eliminate all forms of discrimination and violence against women and girls. We have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that affirms the right to life. We have the Convention on the Rights of the Child that protects the children from violence, abuse, and exploitation. And we have the Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel, Inhumane, and Degrading Treatment or Punishment that prohibits torture and inhumane treatment. Now, when we look at all these instruments, these are pure international instruments. They are suggesting that there is a need for regions, there is a need for continents to develop instruments that aim to curb gender-based violence and femicide. We were recently in the CSW in New York, and one of the arguments that we have made is that it's well and good to have international instruments. It's well and good to have regional instruments. But if we cannot enforce those, unfortunately, their aspirations become an elusive dream. I say this because we have a convention such as CEDAW, which is quite progressive and providing clear guidance in terms of what needs to be done. But we find that countries, continents, they still struggle in terms of curbing and combating gender-based violence and femicide. Now, the CEDAW committee has raised a number of concerns around the prevalence of gender-based violence and femicide in the countries, such as South Africa. It was specific that it was concerned that it appears to be a socialized norm, legitimized and accompanied by a culture of silence and impunity. I want to just pause there. It says a culture of silence and impunity. What does that mean? Within the context of the country that we live in, we are saying you cannot turn a blind eye when gender-based violence happens. You must report it. If you are a victim, you must use the services of the South African Police Service to report such matters. But the converse side is that when you report, you need to be confident that the system will respond to the issues that you are raising. You must be confident that the justice system will do exactly that, render justice in terms of the issue that you are raising. And if you are a bystander, if you are a neighbor, the legislation actually tasks you also not to be silent. But for you not to be silent, there is a need to have whistleblowers being protected in the country. So the system needs to be such that it resonates with the existing challenges and is able to accommodate and provide the necessary safeguards so that when international bodies or committees such as CEDAW, when they raise such concerns, we can confidently talk about the necessary safeguards that we have put in place as a country to ensure that access to justice is realized. Now, the committee further raised concerns to the effect that there are low levels of prosecution and convictions in as far as GBV. I'll talk about that in my presentation, what it means. And it further expressed concerns that the social support services, including shelters, are inadequate due to the inadequate budgetary allocations. Now, as the Commission for Gender Equality, we also had an opportunity to conduct a thorough investigation around the state of shelters in the country. I'll talk about that. But in the main, we are able to establish that funding of shelters is inadequate in the country. Shelters remain one of the methods that are deeply needed by survivors to ensure that they are provided with the necessary services, protection to allow them to go through the justice system, knowing that they are fully capacitated and prepared and safe, most importantly, to testify whenever the need arises before courts. And the committee further raised concerns around patriarchal attitudes and the deeply rooted stereotype views that are held about women's role in South Africa. Now, when we look at our regional instruments, again, they pave a way to South Africa to enact legislation or policies that seeks to curb gender-based violence and femicide. And we have our Maputo Protocol, that is a mandatory legislative instrument that states or that requires state parties to develop laws that prevent gender-based violence and ensure that access to justice and support to the survivors is actually realized. And we have the SADC protocol in 2008. Again, this instrument seeks to promote gender equality, the empowerment of women, including GBV prevention, access to justice, as well as women's role in decision making. Now, all these instruments, colleagues, they are the genesis of some of the legislation and policies that we have adopted in the country. The next slide now talks about the regional instruments. And you'll have observed from the slide that I have omitted the Constitution, but the Constitution is actually the founding piece of a legal prescript that warrants us to ensure that legislation and policies that we developed are founded on the basis of recognizing equality, recognizing dignity and freedom in the main. It reaffirms as a constitution that you cannot strip away the dignity of an individual. It was in fact reaffirmed in 1995 when we were dealing with death penalty, that even the recidivist in this country cannot be stripped of the right to dignity. And that means, colleagues, that even women, even persons with disability, even men cannot be stripped of their right to dignity. They must be protected adequately. Now, as recent as 2022, there were 3 key legislations that have been enacted into law that seeks to address emerging issues coming out of the country to curb and deal with gender-based violence and femicide. Particularly, it was the Domestic Violence Amendment Act, the Criminal Law Amendment Act of 2022, as well as the Criminal Law and Related Matters Act 12 of 2022. Now, when we look at the Domestic Violence Act, it sought to even expand a form of violence where there's spiritual abuse, where there's elderly abuse, and there's coercive behavior. And it also included a very progressive clause around digital protection orders. But I pause to say, whilst we welcome this is one of the things that we have supported. But when we talk about digitized systems, we must be careful not to leave behind the women who are down there, who do not have access to some of these facilities for them to get protection orders online. Because we know one of the challenges that we had when we motivated as the commission for the amendment is that during the weekends, because most people are not, court officials are not working, it was proving to be difficult for protection orders to be issued. And that resulted in many violence taking place, knowing that there is absolutely no recourse that is available other than calling the police, who will say, wait for Monday until you get a protection order. So we welcome this, but we saying at the same time, we must be practical, that in the quest of moving with technology, we must ensure that we don't leave behind those that are in rural, remote areas. Now, there is also a mandatory requirement to report domestic violence. There's also a mandatory requirement for professionals to report any sexual violence that is taking place in the workplace. And again, this is key, especially at institutions of higher learning, in the workplace, at schools. There's that obligation to report such offenses. But we are saying, whilst that is important, let us also ensure that the systems are there to provide the necessary protection for those that report, so that they themselves are not subjected to any form of victimization, or worse, being killed for exactly doing what the legislation is asking them to do. When we look at your Criminal Amendment Act of 2022, it talks about the need to tighten bail conditions. a phenomenon which we know is quite a challenge in the country. There's a school of thought that suggests that bail suggests that a person is found not guilty, which is not the case. The purpose of bail is just to secure the attendance of an accused person before court. But what is really the problem with bail conditions? It's that, practically speaking, when somebody reports a matter before at the South African Police Service, they are seldom informed about the processes that will unfold. They will seldom be informed about what bail is. Suddenly, they will see such a person looming around the streets, and they will think that that person obviously meant they were not found guilty. So there's that practical gap wherein the complainants are not adequately informed around the developments pertaining to their cases. And that is one thing that we have identified, and there's an urgent need for that to be corrected, because if not, it then brings a narrative that people will not have confidence in the justice system. People will not understand the requirements that need to be met when we talk about an application for bail. So those basic things are things that we find that they are often not even addressed or attended to, leading to many complainants disgruntled with the justice system. We still have the National Council on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide of 2024, which is establishing a national council to provide strategic leadership on gender-based violence and femicide. It also emphasizes the need to have a concerted effort amongst the stakeholders, including the private sector, civil society, government, in combating gender-based violence. We also have the National Strategic Plan of 2020, which was established in 2020, leading to 2030. It's meant to be a 10-year strategic plan with a clear milestone to be achieved up until 2030. We had the opportunity as the Commission to actually look at the effectiveness of this plan, whether there has been adequate progress made by government to practically realize the aspirations that have been included in the NSP. And the NSP centered around 6 pillars, which I believe most colleagues would know about it, which is around accountability, prevention, and rebuilding social cohesion, protection, response, economic power, research, and information. Now, as the Commission in 2022-2023, we actually reviewed this. We started a study where we looked at how are these institutions performing? Are we meeting those milestones within the first 2 years? And our overall finding was that there's small incidental progress that has been made. But largely why there hasn't been adequate progress is that there hasn't been that structure, the National Council on Gender-Based Violence. It was not established, and therefore hindering progress in terms of holding others accountable for non-performance. We could not establish certain data ourselves because there was no structure that was established there. But there were, of course, other areas that we acknowledge that the NSP is progressively making progress. When certain legislation that I spoke about, the 3 in particular, were enacted into law, we appreciated under Pillar 5 when there was recognition of economic empowerment as a key element, because we do know that economic dependency is one of the things that keep vulnerable persons in abusive relationship or abusive situations. And we appreciated that from Pillar 5. But overall, the view is that there is a need to fund the National Council on Gender-Based Violence. There is a need to have a concerted effort by all role players if we are intending to curb gender-based violence and femicide. Because, colleagues, it's one thing to have all these instruments. It's one thing to have all these structures that are existing, but it defeats the purpose if all of these cannot yield the desired results, wherein those that are the beneficiaries of these structures, that is the victims of gender-based violence and femicide, if they cannot benefit out of the existence of these structures, if they cannot benefit out of the enacted legislations and policies, we are not going to win the fight against gender-based violence and femicide. One of the progressive things that was done was establishing additional supporting structures, such as your sexual offences courts, your shelters, and Tutuzela care centers. Now, we have the opportunity again to review how effective are these sexual offences courts. We must remember why they were established. They were established to ensure that we expedite the finalization of sexual offences matters in South Africa. That is the primary objective. But what we were able to find as the Commission for Gender Equality is that because of lack of adequate resources, these courts are not achieving what they were designed to do. We have found, amongst others, that there is insufficient intermediaries, which now delays access to justice before the courts. So, which means a minor child who is possibly a victim or a witness has to wait until such time that an intermediary is made available. Most of them, they are on call, but it delays access to justice. And it delays access to justice because we must appreciate that when there is a minor child involved, the preparation of that child to lead or to provide evidence, it's so critical. And it's easy for them to just forget one or two things in terms of their own evidence, and it contributes largely towards the acquittal of some of the accused persons. So it becomes important that we have resourced sexual offences courts with adequate intermediaries, well-trained intermediaries, whenever children are expected to testify before the courts. We've also found that there is a delaying aspect in as far as psychological reports, including minor children and witnesses with mental disabilities. Again, all this now means justice has to be delayed. This means we must postpone. This means there is a propensity or likelihood of this child as a potential witness or as a complainant missing out the opportunity to recall exactly what happened on certain things. And we've observed this before the course that this is actually very critical. So if we're going to talk about the need to ensure that we address gender-based violence, one of the immediate things that needs to be done, let us adequately resource sexual offences courts with the necessary infrastructures, persons, and the necessary skills so that they can achieve the very objective that they were established to do. Now, in as far as shelters are concerned, again, we had a 3-year study as the Commission to really investigate how effective are shelters in the country. And as I've said earlier on, we found that funding is a problem. We found that in terms of resources also they are lacking. In terms of security guards that are supposed to be guarding the shelters, they themselves have not been vetted. And if they're not being vetted, it means those that are stationed in the shelters themselves are not safe from even the security guards. We found, amongst others, that the house mothers that are in the shelters, they're not adequately trained. Some of them, unfortunately, we were able to establish that they even use the information of those victims that they establish within the shelters to gossip around them. We've also found that women who are stationed in these shelters, some of them are denied sanitary towels because of some of these house mothers, because there was no proper regulation in terms of their behavior and conduct. And in terms of the TCC, we were led by our commissioners, wherein we had to look at how effective are the TCCs. Now, if we look at the annual report of the National Prosecuting Authority, it says something very much important there. It confirms that victims or survivors that undergo through a TCC model, they tend to perform better when they are testifying before the courts. It's because of the adequate resources that are given, it's because of the adequate preparation that is given, and it leads to successful prosecution. The annual report talks about about 72% conviction rate of those that went through the Tutuzela care centers compared to those that have not gone through the Tutuzela care centers. So Tutuzela care centers remain a critical feature towards addressing gender-based violence. But again, these must be adequately resourced. Most of these TCCs are relying on donor funding. There seems to be no clarity in terms of who takes responsibility for the TCCs. Is it the National Prosecuting Authority? Is it the Department of Social Development? Is it the South African Police Service? We've recently had an engagement of this nature where we've realized that there is a need perhaps to have a specific prescript that indicates who takes responsibility or in terms of regulating and ensures that the TCCs are really functional in the country. Because if we have these structures but no one is taking responsibility for them, again, we will not benefit out of the desired aspirations that we had thought of when we proposed that TCCs must be there in the country. So these TCCs mostly, we found that they lacked dedicated securities, they didn't have surveillance cameras, and security is not informed by risk assessment. And the danger here, colleagues, is that if you are going to place people at shelters, if you're going to place people at the TCCs, there's also this high risk that those that are aware that they're going to testify may easily access them. We've seen that with the shelters, that it became so easy in some of the shelters for perpetrators, family members of perpetrators, to jump the wall and really try to harm or even kill some of the witnesses. So security it becomes very much important if we are really going to be committed to address gender-based violence, practically speaking. And we need to include the forensic nurses, because one of the shortages that we observed was that we don't have those forensic nurses. And because of that, it means evidence that is going to be led, evidence that is going to be ventilated upon may be lacking, and therefore may lead to the acquittal of some of the cases. Now, I hold a view, colleagues, that there is a disjuncture between reported cases at the South African Police Service, the cases that are ultimately enrolled before courts, and the statistics pertaining to the conviction rate. The annual report of the National Prosecuting Authority confirms that you actually have a high number of gender-based violence cases that are reported at the South African Police Service. But when those cases must be enrolled to court, we observe that the number is reducing drastically, which means there must be something fundamentally wrong between the reporting of the cases and the point where they are now enrolled before the court. And I want to take us through some of those factors that contribute towards that disjuncture or that discrepancy. Firstly, once a case is reported, obviously there must be an investigation that is conducted. But we were able to establish that delay in DNA results is one of the factors that contribute towards the withdrawal of cases in South Africa. I've reflected in the slides that the South African Police Service has listed about 73 cases that were provisionally withdrawn between 2014 and 2024 due to pending DNA results. And 50 of those are rape-related. And I want us to look at the numbers. The numbers actually reflect victims, reflect human beings. It essentially means the provisional withdrawal meant 50 individuals possibly are delayed in accessing justice or finalizing GBV matters before the courts. One of the factors that lead to that disjunction is unfit and unethical South African police officials. Now, I must be careful here because I must acknowledge that there are incredible officers that we have in the South African Police Service who are doing an incredible job in terms of thorough, comprehensive, unimpeachable investigations that lead to successful prosecution on gender-based violence cases. We know them, we observe some of their work, and we continue to applaud them to say, do exactly that. But we do have a few rotten potatoes that unfortunately they contribute towards members of society losing hope and faith in the justice system. As early as this month, I've reflected in the slides that we had a sergeant who had reported that about 49 dockets were banned during an arson incident in Buhlokong police station. He reported that 49 of those were banned during an arson. And these dockets were now found lying in his garage at home. And there were about 50 vehicle swaps that were supposed to be at the Free State Laboratory, but again, these were found in his house. So about 50 swaps in his garage, 49 dockets in his garage. This essentially meant there are individuals who are delayed in accessing justice. And the danger again, when dockets of this nature are nowhere to be traced, it means the defense lawyers, and correctly so, must ask that the matters must be withdrawn until such time that the state is ready to re-enroll the matter. And the danger is that once a person is released on those terms, you are having vulnerable victims that may be killed because of having reported such matters. So this is one of the areas that we must actually acknowledge that is contributing towards the slow number of cases or the minimal number of cases that are now enrolled before courts, because you can't enroll something where dockets cannot be traced, where swaps could not be allocated, especially if these were going to be critical for the purposes of forensic DNAs. We have observed that mediation of cases, particularly GBV cases, is also one of the contributing factors that leads to cases not being enrolled before courts. I have cited here one of our ongoing investigation in the province of Mpumalanga, where there is a collusion between parents and truck drivers, wherein the parents, they allow truck drivers to sleep with their children, impregnate their children, and in return to receive money or groceries. It's an ongoing investigation that we are closely working with the relevant officials. But because there is a view that GBV cases can be mediated, because we don't want to bring a stigma to the family, we don't want to bring a taboo in the family by reporting some of these well-known individuals, there is that trend that we observe where families opt to mediate those cases between themselves and the perpetrators. Something this, unfortunately, should not be condoned. Something that really should be prosecuted when it is identified. But those are the lived realities that we see. We do know that there are children who have written, who are scared to go home because their own families, their own parents, are giving them away to the truck drivers that are passing from the province going in some of the nearby countries. So we have even those records where it's clear that we have minor children, we have children that should be in school, but they're scared to go home to their own parents. So if you now report a matter of that nature, unfortunately, you're not going to get cooperation even from the role players that have been identified. And that leads to some of these cases really not being enrolled before courts. I've listed point number 4 deliberately, that we have inadequate witness protection services for victims and survivors. And I've specifically highlighted this in my earlier presentation. But it is important that if we are going to restore faith and confidence in the justice system, we must ensure that protective services that are offered by law enforcement agencies are intact. They must be flawless, because at stake, we are talking about a human life. At stake, we're talking about somebody who is is standing up for justice, somebody who's for social justice, somebody who wants to see justice being realized. But if we cannot put the necessary safeguard to ensure that protective services are intact, unfortunately, we are not going to have many people who are willing to proceed with the whole trial because they know that they may be violated or even killed, as we have seen with some of the cases that I've just spoken about. So the lack of confidence in the justice system clearly is something that we must talk about, because it informs whether we are winning in addressing gender-based violence in the country. I've said earlier on, there's a problem in terms of poor communication around the status of bail in most of these cases. There's also an issue regarding decisions to prosecute by the National Prosecuting Authority. When a prosecutor or the DPP or the control prosecutor has decided not to prosecute, we were able to establish as the commission that some of those decisions are not communicated to complainants. In some instances, we find that the reasons to decline to prosecute are not even communicated to the victims. And because of that, you now have a lack of confidence in the system, because you have reported the matter, you don't know why this person is out. You are just told that the matter is no longer proceeding. It therefore becomes important that we look at the necessary internal control system within the SAPS and the NPA to ensure that where there is an administrative gap of such nature, it's immediately addressed, because at the core of it, we may be failing to address gender-based violence and femicide. Witnesses may not be keen to report. Other persons may also not be keen to report some of these matters going forward. We have highlighted, yes, lengthy trials, which is one of the factors that most complainants do not want to undergo. There's also sloppy prosecution in some of these cases, which I will slightly talk about, because it's one of the cases that, as you know, we are dealing with the case of Tim Omodoso. But I just wanted to highlight at high level that whilst we talk about sloppy prosecution, we have solid, seasoned prosecutors in the country who are also doing incredible job in ensuring that access to justice is realized. I've highlighted one or two cases there, one in the Durban High Court in 2021, where we had a victim, an activist of note, who was stabbed 21 times with a butcher knife. And we were able to get a successful prosecution there. We have seen also with the state versus Togo, where now the understanding of consent is now being well understood, to the effect that consent to one sexual encounter, it is not automatically a consent to subsequent encounters. So a kiss is not consent to sexual intercourse. It is imperative that we understand that, because we drew lessons from Togo that it cannot be deduced that just because somebody consents to oral sex, it automatically means go ahead, have intercourse with me. Consent must be obtained at all times.
Doctor, you are left with about 3 minutes to wrap up.
Yes, thank you. I'm almost done there. Now, I wanted to reflect shortly to say, whilst we have these incredible judgments, we also see some of these judgments that are a regression towards the efforts that we have made towards the fight against gender-based violence and femicide. And the state versus Omodoso, a recent matter, which I'm certain that colleagues are aware of, it's a setback when we talk about access to justice, when we talk about confidence in the justice system, because it reflects that somebody did not do their job to ensure that somebody is held accountable for the offenses that they have charged with. And what is said here is that it's not so much about the inadequate evidence, but it would seem that the judgment centers around the prosecution having failed to have done certain things. And as the commission, we have held a media brief around this to outline some of the plans we have to ensure that such things don't happen again. And in conclusion, I must say that there have been strides in the country and systems in place to respond to this pandemic called gender-based violence and femicide. We have important prescripts that have been tabled. We have progressive judgments. We have awareness campaigns that are constantly ongoing. But we have observed that the behavioral attitude of the perpetrators seem not to be changing. Are we winning this fight? Are we losing this fight? And that is something that we must reflect in this discussion. But the gaps in the justice system we must acknowledge that they undermine every effort taken by the country to combat gender-based violence and femicide. We must therefore have a concerted effort informed by evidence-based interventions at an individual, community, and workplace level to ensure that we address gender-based violence in the country. Gender-based violence is a reality. We need each other. We must report it, but we must confront the existing challenges that we have so that those systems that have been put in place can respond adequately. Chairperson, I thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Matatoka, for your insightful presentation. It's actually very deep what you have just presented to us, and one just, take a deep breath, and because in one way or the other, all of us have experienced some form of gender-based violence. And for all that you have outlined to us, the fact that people are not protected, when you think you are running to an institution that is supposed to protect you, you feel even more disappointed by the institution. It's just heartbreaking. And without any further ado, I know we all, if I were to give each one of us an opportunity to say something about what has been revealed in this presentation, all of us will have something to say. But for the sake of this discussion, I'm now going to allow Prof. Mazivandala, Saapam Limpopo chapter treasurer attached to UL, to just introduce the panelists, to just reflect on the issues that were raised by Dr. Matatoka. And then we're going to have this discussion until about 8:05. Prof, the stage is yours. Introduce the panelists. And panelists, I give you each 5 minutes to talk to the presentation. And thereafter, you're going to engage with the speaker yourselves until 5:00. So I'm giving each one of you 5 minutes. But before that, let's have the introductions done by Prof. Tanyani. Prof, I see your camera is already on. Please take us through.
Thank you, Program Director. As indicated, my name is Tanyani Mazivandila. I'm going to give a summary biography of the panelists who are going to respond to the keynote that we just listened to now. The first panelist that we have is Prof. P. Morosi from University of Warwick, UK. She's an associate professor of educational leadership at the Center for Education Studies at the university. Before joining Warwick, Prof. Morosi worked at some of universities in South Africa, where she was NRF C1 rated. She's a member of British Educational Leadership Management and Administration Society, where she serves as a trustee and was a founding convener of its Gender in Leadership Research Interest Group. She's a co-member of Women Leading Education Across Continents Network, an international network with global membership. She has also published extensively in areas of gender, educational leadership, including co-editing a Bloomsbury Handbook of Gender and Educational Leadership, which was first of its kind. Her research interests focus on gender in educational leadership, exploring how organizational practices and policies in schools and higher education institutions influence leadership development and identity formation, particularly amongst women and Black women as marginalized group. Welcome, Prof. Morosi. Our second panelist is Dr. Reverend N. Rapakwana from the University of Limpopo. She is a director of Gender Desk at the University of Limpopo. She obtained a Doctor of Literature and Philosophy in Health Studies at the University of South Africa. She worked at different health facilities as a professional nurse, midwife, tutor, nurse manager, and deputy director in Mpumalanga, Eastern Cape, Gauteng, Western Cape, and Limpopo province. She is also a clergy at an evangelical Lutheran church in Southern Africa, serving at Polokwane Circuit. She's a born-again child of God, a preacher of Word of God, a motivator, and a community worker. Welcome, Dr. Reverend. Our third panelist is Dr. S. Murubulangwenya. She's a head of Department of Political Science and Cultural Studies at the University of Limpopo. She has a PhD in political science, a former Fulbright scholar who holds a master in women and gender studies from San Francisco State University in USA. She's a social justice activist who advocates for lesbian, bisexual, and queer rights in South Africa. Her research interest is gender politics, focus on LGBTQ narratives and experiences, social movements, democracy and political activism, African sexuality and gender violence, and feminist foreign policy. Welcome, Doc. And our last but not least panelist is Dr. S. Tshwane. She's a lecturer at Tshwane University of Technology, Polokwane campus. She holds a doctorate in policing from Tshwane University of Technology. She completed a pedagogical practitioner qualification in Finland. She contributes to postgraduate education as a course supervisor, fostering advanced academic and practical insights in the field of policing. She has presented technical reports for professional audience across policy, safety, and security sector. And her research area of specialization include gender equity or gender equality, sustainability, gender relations as catalyst for gender reforms. She firmly advocates that equality between men and women is a fundamental to societal progress. So these are our panelists. Welcome to this session. We are looking forward to hear your response to the guest speaker's address. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. I'm now giving over to Prof. Morosi from the University of Warwick to take the podium. Prof. Morosi, the 5 minutes start now.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I would like to thank the organizers of the event really for having invited me. Having listened to the keynote address and looking at who is on the panel and perhaps the audience, I feel like I'm a bit of an outsider, but not so much an outsider because I do most of my research in South Africa, even though I'm now based in the UK. And I do get horrified sometimes at some of the images, some of the messages, and some of the stories we hear either on the news or from social media. And I think just recently, one of those that was flying through social media was an image of a school principal. And I'll talk about this because that's where I do my research. A school principal attempting to hit or hitting a female teacher. And I was just thinking and wondering if anybody or a man, for that matter, could have the courage to hit or to even attempt to hit a woman in the presence of other people. How much more violence does that kind of person do at home? And it just shows the extent to which some of these perpetrators of gender-based violence are so brazen. Really, they stop at nothing. And I was again horrified by the story about a man who was killed and I reserve my judgment strongly here. I'm tempted to just say what I think and what I feel, but I'm not going to. A man who was killed by a woman who found her at the act of violating a 6-year or 6-month-old, that's really, really horrific. But I think it just goes to show, and as the keynote address, Dr. Matotoka has shown, that this is now a pandemic. And I think I must say that being where I am, I can, and I know this is not a point of reassurance, but I can just say, perhaps it's not something to be proud of, that this is not a problem in South Africa alone. There's horror stories across the globe. And I just want to reflect on the final question that the keynote address Dr. Matotoka asked towards the end of the presentation. And that question has to do with whether we are winning or we are losing this fight. And I just want to mention a few pointers towards that. From where I'm sitting, from listening to the presentation and from everything that I've had, I don't think we are anyway towards winning that fight. But it is encouraging to hear that there is so much in place. I think if there's one thing good that is known worldwide, is that South African laws and South African constitution is very good. But I think one thing that we learned while we were still students at university was that what good is a constitution and what good is policies and laws and rules if they cannot be implemented effectively. So it is encouraging to hear that there are laws, there are acts. It is encouraging to hear that there are systems in place. It is encouraging to hear that there are instruments, there are courts, there are even shelters to protect the victims. But for me, this speaks more to managing the problem. And I think that from hearing how endemic the problem is, I think there should be an equal effort in terms of preventing the problem. And I know that I'm not saying something that has not been tried or something that hasn't been thought of. But I think that I'll talk about just 3 things. I know that we have 5 minutes. I'll just say them very quickly. I think the first thing for me, and it relates very well with where the keynote address started. It's about understanding what we mean by gender-based violence. And I accept that there is legal definitions, there's other kinds of definitions. But I think when we are looking at a society as diverse and as wide as the South African society is, does everybody, children in schools, people in the communities, people in the men and women in the workplace, does everybody understand what gender-based violence means? Because some of these big acts happen because people got away with small acts of upskirting women in school when you were a little boy, upskirting, putting a little mirror underneath the skirt of a girl and thinking that it was funny. You got away with it and you think that is okay. So it starts from little things like those. And I think all other forms of harassment and sexual harassment, it's about understanding what we really mean by that and going far in terms of making sure that everybody understands what we mean by gender-based violence. The second point is about education. How much education do we really know about a whole range of things in terms of knowing about what to do, what not to do, not only what to do when you have been violated. And I understand that there's still a lot of education that needs to happen around that area. And it's really disheartening to hear some of those stories about children being used by their own or being given away by their own parents for the sake of money. And I think we all know that one of the biggest problems in South Africa towards this gender-based violence has to do with the socioeconomic status. But is that really an excuse? There are so many other poor people who don't give away or who don't give their children away to men who are going to entertain themselves and abuse them so that they can have something to eat. And I think that calls into the morality of us as a society. What kind of people are we that we
Rob,
could
you
resort
have got a minute left.
a minute? Thank you.
Yeah.
So that is about education, and it's about education in schools as well, in terms of how far the curriculum goes. The final point, the third one, is about masculinities. What kind of masculinities are our children exposed to? And I'll talk about children because children grow up with what they observe their fathers doing in the home. They grow up with that and thinking that that is the right way to be a man. And so this is why I think the role of families, the role of communities is really important, because it's about talking about all these things at community level, where people can understand what is being said, the language that is being used, the resources that are being referred to are things that are in the community that people can identify with. I think balancing that prevention and management of GBV will go somewhere towards us winning that war. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Prof. Next online is Dr. Reverend Rapakwana. The floor is yours, Doc. Dr. Reverend Rapakwana, are you in the house? Please unmute and go ahead. Oh, I see, we can see you, although you are... Okay, Reverend, I'm going to request that, if you can hear me, I'm going to request that you log out and you log in. I'm going to give you an opportunity. And as you do that, I'm going to request that we take Dr. Mrobula, Dr. S. Mrobula Ngwenya. Reverend, your network and bandwidth is low. So I'm going to request that we try and you log out and you come in. And in the meantime, I'm going to take Dr. S. Mrobula Ngwenya to take the podium as you try and sort out the network in the background. We'll try and give you an opportunity. Dr. Mrobula Ngwenya, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, colleagues. You will not be able to see me because I'm load shedded and I'm using my phone to just, give me light so that I can be able to reflect on my notes. But firstly, I would just like to thank the organizing committee for the invitation and, forming part of this important discussion and contributing to finding solutions on how we can, find ways of ending violence in South Africa. Thanks to the speaker, and as he was speaking, I'm sitting here and I'm like, it felt like he was talking about policies that are existing outside of South Africa, because everything felt like, for a country that has so many progressive and also has international commitments into ending violence, we are failing dismally into addressing gender-based violence and femicide. So I think my reflection is going to come from the point of departure of, reminding all of us that we need to always acknowledge and realize that we are existing in highly, heteronormative, homophobic, sexist, patriarchal, and biphobic societies, which, discard and try to do away with anything that is outside heteronormativity. With that being said, the speaker talked of intersectionality, and it brought me to an understanding that most of what we are seeing, or the violence that we are seeing, we cannot really understand it if we don't look at it from an intersectional perspective, meaning that we are looking at how race, gender, sex, sexuality, and class, they intersect and they form this one, identity. I'm looking at intersectionality and want to reflect on it based on one of the response that is proposed by the government to respond to gender-based violence, which is the NSP, right? I know that, and colleagues, you might be aware that, during the second presidential GBV summit in 2020, there were calls to localize the NSP because it was found to be lacking. It was found to be in a language that is not easily accessible to ordinary South African citizens. The last speaker raised a question to say, while we are trying to find solutions to end this normalized gendered violence, does everybody understand what GBV is? I want to add to the question and say, does everyone understand the policies that we have? Do we all understand, or do we all have the knowledge of the existence of the NSP and how we can contribute and make the NSP to come into reality? The 4 pillars that I usually draw from when I think of the NSP and how we can make it impactful in our societies is usually pillar 1, when we are always calling the government to account. We've been calling the government to account. There've been so many hashtags. And I don't even know how much more should people continue to put their bodies literally on the line to call the government to account. How many more hashtag justice for this person that needs to happen for the government to wake up and realize that GBV is no longer the second pandemic, rather the first pandemic, and it should be treated as such. The second pillar, which is for me, which is very important, which draws from an intersectional perspective, is pillar 5, which draws from the questioning of the economic power, which when we look at how most people, most South Africans are living, with little, and they are finding themselves in situations where they literally have to sell their bodies to make ends meet. It's where we find situations where parents are actually trafficking their children, which obviously is not okay. And then pillar 6 also, which is research, and this has been stationed in most institutions of higher learning, and it was found that, we as colleagues, we actually do research on GBV, but we have been doing this work in silos. And then it was brought back to us to say, why not we form some sort of cohort so that we know that what is happening in each institutions, and we are able to take back this information and these findings back to the communities that are affected. Because one of the problems that we have been faced is that there's been a disjuncture from theory and practice. We do all this important work, we theorize around ending this normalized gendered violence, but we are unable to take it back to the communities that actually need the solutions and responses, right? So for me, I feel like, even though, the speaker confidently informs us that the NSP has been responsive and we need to be, optimistic into, these Chapter 9 institutions responding, I feel like we are very far into finding solutions into ending this gendered violence. There's a lot of groundwork that still needs to be done. Grassroots movement organizing has shown us that, collective movement and literally going to the ground and calling for accountability actually does work and actually does get people to listen and respond to the call. So I stand on the same feeling and the same narrative that we are very far into finding the solutions to end gendered violence. There's so many contributing factors, and we actually do need to look at it from an intersectional perspective. We cannot separate how this violence happened. We need to look at race, gender, sex, sexuality, and also the class of people who are affected by the violence. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for your insightful response. I'm now going to give this opportunity. Dr. Reverend Rapakwana, are you ready? Have you sorted out the network issues? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, your line is a bit breaking.
If when I put on the camera.
Okay, doctor, your line is breaking. We can't hear you. And I can see also on the video that your picture is a bit buffering. We can't hear you properly. Let me take Dr. Swane and try and move to maybe another room or another space. Doctor? Doc? Please try and move to another space or another venue and try that. But in the meantime, whilst you are trying to do that, I'm going to take Dr. S. Swane from Tshwane University of Technology to respond to the presentation. Dr. Swane, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good evening to all the doctors and professors that are here. And let me just simply say all protocol observed. And also thank the invitation that I received from Saapam Committee. Rest assured, you've won yourself a membership because of the great initiative, of course, that I'm seeing from your work and the ones that I've been following that you've been, implementing throughout the country. So I feel like Dr. Mututuka has said everything, and some of the things that he mentioned, they were actually disturbing to listen to. But unfortunately, these are the societal ills that are taking place within our communities, and some of this we get to see and witness them. The reality is that are we as a country really making progress in eradicating GBV and F in the country? And to respond to that question, my answer will be, if really we were eradicating or making any progress towards eradicating gender-based violence and femicide in the country, we wouldn't have a 58-year-old man who allegedly raped a 13-year-old girl at Mananga Primary School recently. This is a recent case. And also, we wouldn't have Rosina Lamola from Molechega, who was butchered by his alleged boyfriend. We wouldn't have Sheila Makakani Maluleke, who was also butchered by his alleged boyfriend. So if really we are making so much progress, and with all the reports that we are receiving from SAPS, whenever there's a quarterly report of them portraying a picture that we are really making progress, just like NPA recently reported to us during the State of Nation 2025 that they have made 91.9% of rates in femicide prosecuted. In total, they had 517 cases and they prosecuted 475. And to them, as they were giving a report during the SONA, they were saying they're making progress. But if really they're making progress, why do we have a report, or why do we see or even witness, some of us, where a woman or a child is killed every day in South Africa or raped every day? We wouldn't have a Kwetwe case that seems to be losing its momentum today because of the miscarriage of the criminal justice system in South Africa. So the Dr. Matotoka spoke about the miscarriage from the law, the SAPS personnel. If really South Africa was really implementing every legislation, every act that the first speaker, doctor, spoke about, I think if the implementation process was really implemented how it's supposed to be implemented, if really we wouldn't have, those rotten potatoes like the law enforcement, the police officials who claimed that the docket were missing only to find that, or they were burned only to find that they were in his garage. Only if we were able to, erupt all of these rotten potatoes, perhaps we could be making progress. Only if corruption was not part of the law enforcement in South Africa, perhaps we could be making a progress. But also, just to go deeper in the fact of trying and answering the question of, are we really making progress? In the first quarter of 2023 and 2024, statistics from the SAPS that claims to be making so much progress in trying and eradicate the phenomena or the sketch at hand, they reported that they were able to make so many arrests and they were able to prosecute. And you ask yourself, pertaining to rape cases that are happening in South Africa, not so long ago, the former minister of SAPS indicated that there's so much backlog regarding rape cases in South Africa, mainly because they do not have that was Bekele during his time. They didn't have the accurate kit to do the DNA swapping and sampling to effectively continue with those rape cases in South Africa. And also, I would like to touch on the fact that Dr. Matotoko also mentioned that although we have so many cases that are taking place in South Africa and women and children being victims, we cannot shy away from the fact that also men and LGBTQI plus community persons are experiencing GBV in South Africa, and they don't seem to be getting so much attention or seem to be getting the same support as it's been given to women and children. So could it be that that's another trigger that it's leading everyone to where we are today? That's another question that one can ask him or herself, that could it be that men are so angry because of such things that they feel women are more prioritized? And of course, women tend to be prioritized mainly because of the statistics that we are seeing every day. So in terms of answering if really we are making progress, the convictions that MPA claimed that they have made of 92% in intimate partnership femicide prosecution, my question is, this 92%, where is it drawn from? Is it drawn from the entire statistic of a country that everybody is hearing about or witnessing? Or is it a sample size that they had created, maybe based on a province? Maybe I would like to get a clarity on that matter. With so many legislations put in place, but yes, yet as a country, we are still facing significant challenges in eradicating this GBV. And to be quite honest and frank about it, I don't see GBV being eradicated anytime soon. Reason being is that we still have women that, because of the power dynamics that they find themselves in, where the perpetrator is the sole provider of a household, they will open a case today and later go and withdraw. And such victims will later hear that they are no more because the perpetrator has taken their life. And also, do we still have, cultural dynamics that says, something along those lines? If we still have cultural practices that are being enforced, that you are a returned soldier, therefore it literally leads a lot of women that have been experiencing GBV to stay where they are because they are afraid of returning. They are afraid of being labeled as returned soldiers. Therefore, a woman or a victim chooses to stay even where it is no longer comfortable for her to stay. So the society itself is also contributing to the perpetuation of GBV in South Africa. How we treat the women that have returned from their marriages contribute to why we have so many figures of or statistics of women that are being killed in South Africa every day. And also, Dr. Matotoka touched on the parents that are actually selling their children just to survive. I would like to know the gender of those parents, because in South Africa, mostly when we talk about GBV, it is associated with women, mainly because more of statistics come from the female side of things. But it is also acknowledgeable to notice that, or it is also important to notice that we do have a boy child who gets molested in South Africa. We do have a male who was just recently raped and it was trending in South Africa. If all of these things can be taken into consideration, and if all of these victims, they can be, acknowledged the same way and receive the same treatment in South Africa, perhaps, and even from the law enforcement side of things, perhaps, just perhaps, that might actually assist us in at least decreasing the current figures that we are sitting in. And also, we still have
minute left.
And also we still have a dilemma within the law enforcement spaces where police officials feels like they can still mediate when a victim goes and open a case. A law enforcement takes, or a police officials takes the matter into his or her own hands to say, I want to mediate. Whereas we've got, an agreement or an engagement that has taken place between SAPS and DSD, where they have provided the social workers, people experts that are trained to deal with this type of scourge. The SAPS on its own, they don't have the right capacity or the right personnel that are capacitated to deal with GBV on their own. So if law enforcement officials can also stop trying to mediate the fact that they want to encourage the victim to talk it out and to solve the issue, because gender-based violence is still regarded as a family a scourge or a family matter in South Africa. If law enforcement can pull away, and when a victim walks in to open a case against the perpetrator, and they do as such and hand over the case to the relevant social workers to do their work, then perhaps it might actually real positive result. But as of now, to answer the question, are we really winning in eradicating the GBV scourge in the country? No, we are not. Actually, it's increasing on daily basis. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Doctor. I'm just going to try for the last time to accommodate Reverend Rapakwana. Doctor, are you in the house? Have you moved somewhere else where there's better network? Can you try talk to the presentation? Let's hear. Dr. Reverend Rapakwana, can you hear me? Yeah, we don't seem to be. Yes, Doc, please try.
I can hear you.
Yeah, you are much better now.
But my challenge is you cannot hear me. I've moved around the house, but where I am, I'm in the rural areas where I visited for my holiday, and it's not okay for me to.
No, we can hear you now. Please proceed.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. And thank you, Dr. Matotoka, for highlighting all the things that you have said to us. Starting with the policies, mentioning the protocols, and all even the cases that you have shared with us. Some of the issues that you have shared with us are eye-openers. But what I wanted to say is that for us who are working in the field, is not always some of the things that are new, but our challenge is that are all these policies, are all these protocols that we are trying to educate people, is it changing people? Because the more we talk to people about it, whether we are mentioning the policies, there is always problems, one after the other. And the more we campaign, the more we do outreach, I don't know how can we say we will reach all the entire people, especially in the institution of higher learning. Where we are, we think sometimes when we talk about gender issues, we always think that is a women's issue. And it is not. It is the issue for all of us, including men. And we still have a problem of patriarchy. We still have a problem of masculinity. We still have a problem where everything is just around men. And also, in our society, we aggravate that because we're always talking about taking a girl child to school, educating a girl child, whereas we are leaving the boy child behind. And the boy child is now there with us at the tertiary, who is seeing himself as a man, who is doing everything without consent, who is forcing everything, because from primary, from wherever, they were not taking him along, they were taking a girl child. For me, I'm saying we are in the journey, and in this journey, we need all of us. When you were mentioning about the NSP, yes, it's the right one. And I like all the pillars. My question with the pillars is that The relevant people knows about the NSP. Yes, we've been called and we know about all the pillars who is responsible. That one we can say, yes, some stakeholders know about the NSP and the responsibilities that we are supposed to. Do we have resources to implement? Do we have resources to do all the things that they said we need to do as far as our responsibilities on the pillars are concerned? You know, the other thing that I also want to touch is that one of the framework that we do have as an institution of higher learning. You know, that framework is directing all the institution of higher learning, you know, to take care of GBV in a sense of having the standalone offices where all the GBV cases are being addressed. But even now, we are having a community for practitioners in the country where all the practitioners in the university we meet, you know, quarterly. There are other universities that they said we are just coming, but we are not belonging. There's nobody who is a focal person for that office. Then I also wanted to know, are you also assisting other institutions of higher learning who doesn't have these focal offices, which is talked by the framework of the institution of higher learning when they wanted to address GBV in our institutions? And also, you know, us as practitioners of GBV or harassment or discrimination or equality at the institution of higher learning, we try to come together, you know, all the 26 universities quarterly. But our challenge is now we are going to not to come together because of no funding. How are you assisting us also that we need to come together as we used to do? But because there are no funds, we are going to come maybe meet once a year, whereas we're able to meet physically twice a year. You know, those are some of the challenges that we face. We do have shelters, and like where I am, I don't even know the nearby shelter. Maybe also when you are going to close, you'll just educate us on that. But Tutuzela Center, we are aware of. Where I'm working, I'm next to one of the Tutuzela Center who is doing brilliant job. I'm referring all the clients and we work so closely together. But the challenges that we have mentioned about the Tutuzela centers, which include that they don't even have forensic nurses. What are we doing about that? Those challenges, who is responsible to address those issues? Because those Tutuzela centers, they are one-stop center which assist us all, whether it's community, whether it's institution of higher learning, all of us, we are being assisted by the Tutuzela centers. And you know, I like it
Doc,
when
you have a minute left.
I like it when you are saying, yes, we are winning. But on our side, we are just still journeying this. And the journey is not so easy. We need resources from the grassroots, resources in the communities. Because if I'm having resource at the university, but what about the community around us? There are no resources and there are no people who are advocate, who campaign enough for the people in the community to be aware of all the things that we encounter on daily basis. That is why there is always going to be GBV, harassment, all forms, because people need to know what is it, what can they do, how to prevent it. Let's work together because we are working in silos. We don't share the resources that those who have resources, they don't share the resources. Let's share the resources. And thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Dr. Matutoka, before you respond, I just want to recap on what each one of them said. Prof. Morosi indicated that we actually have a lot of good laws, good policies, even our institution, but then do people understand what gender-based violence mean? And Dr. Mrubulangwenya indicated that she also hinted on the issue of does everyone understand what these policies are talking about? And she also indicated on the issue of doing research in silos, and also that when we do all this, we should consider and take everything back into the communities. But also she hinted on taking government on to account. Dr. Swane, in wrapping up, she indicated also that a community does contribute to the scares that we see today. And she is of the view that we have made little to no strides at all in terms of progress eradicating this pandemic. And Dr. Pakwane indicated that is there any change that we see when we educate, or are we remaining stagnant? When we campaign, is there any change that we see? And also she indicated on the fact that we need all of us to be able to fight this. And she also indicated on the issue that Dr. Mrubulangwenya hinted on, that we work in silos, but wrapping up to say we need each other as communities. I would like you on that note to respond to all the presentations as we wrap up. After this, I'm going to open up questions for our audience to interact with the presentation and ask some questions. Over to you, Dr. Matotoka.
Thank you so much. I'll try to be succinct. In as far as whether people know about the laws, whether people know about GBV, do people know about these policies? The study that I referred to of the HSRC made a very incredible finding to say, are people aware about these very prescripts? And the answer was affirmative. To say people are actually aware. It was demonstrated that awareness campaigns are on the rise. So the education aspect of it is being done. But what is clear from our own observation is that it is the behavioral aspect that seems to be a challenge. And that is why it is recommended that perhaps maybe we need those evidence-based interventions, even at an individual level, at the community level, as well as at the workplace level, so that we don't miss the opportunity to really understand what informs some of these behavioral attitudes. Because what the study also found was that though perpetrators, or largely men, are aware of this, they also viewed these laws as an opportunity for women to lodge false allegations against them. They said the laws are too flexible, making it so simple for women to lodge cases against them. So they are aware. It's how it is understood that they are effective from their perspective, which is a bit of a problem. But there is definitely a need to have those interventions at an individual level, because that where really lies the problem. So there is generally that understanding, because campaigns have been run. I mean, civil society is busy, Chapter 9 is busy, government is busy. But I think in the context of this busyness, what really informs these interventions? Are we thumb-sucking some of these programs that we're educating society about? What informs that? So there needs to be, by the looks of things, a scientific process that we undertake to really identify critical programs, educational programs that are fit to address the discourse, which is behavioral attitudes that really needs to be addressed. And that is why I think it is Pillar 6, which talks about the research, that we need a research of that nature. And institutes of higher learning must come to the party as well. We must encourage institutions for higher learning, your master's degrees, your doctoral degrees, to find practical solutions. It doesn't really help to have theoretical recommendations, which we know we cannot practically implement. But how do we look at practical challenges that we see, and then recommend something that a department, an institution can say, I'm going to move from point A, B, C based on the study. So it becomes very much important that we don't just have research that is conducted, but not informed by the basic things that are happening on the ground level. We need to hold the government accountable. Absolutely. One of the things that we are doing as the commission, we have what we call transformative hearings, where we call accounting officers. They come before the commission and account on the measures they put in place to create an enabling environment. As we speak, this afternoon, in fact, we were in Sol Plaatje University. We are currently running campaigns with the Department of Higher Education and Training to sensitize students, staff members, around the prevalence of sexual harassment, which we view as a barrier for transformation in the workplace. We will be circulating around most, if not all, universities, because it's something that we felt that based on the report that we did, it's lacking, it's not clear. Sex for Marks continues to be an issue that is there at institutions of higher learning. At SRC level, there seems to be problems and where there are no campaigns. So we have recommended that, and the Department of Higher Education is currently spearheading that. So yes, we agree. I mean, at community levels, there is that contribution towards the sketch. They mediate, they facilitate, as I've indicated in one of the provinces. But what is really the problem? One view was that, well, it's because of the poverty levels. That is why it is so easy for them to receive groceries. But that cannot be the excuse. That surely cannot be the excuse, because at the core of it, there is human dignity. There is a child involved. Right to education, right to life, right to freedom, bodily integrity. You can name them. They are all bestowed on this learner. So we cannot use poverty as a ground why parents should, for example, permit such conduct. So communities do contribute significantly. In fact, there are instances where even some of the traditional leaders they participate in some of this mediation of GBV cases. Hence, again, the recommendation, even from the study itself, was that have interventions even at community level. Maybe we've been running around, maybe we've been educating, but what really informs these educational programs? Perhaps, as I've said, a more scientific approach we need to look at. Are we seeing change?
Okay.
Yes. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, I want you to just hold it right there. I want to now give an opportunity to our audience to engage with your presentation. Maybe you will just proceed as they ask the question. I'm not able to, my screen is a bit black this side. I see Dr. Dennis on my screen. I may not be able to see the audience. I'm going to ask Dr. Litoko to just help me identify those who have raised their hands. Anyone from our audience who wants to reflect or who wants to comment on or who want to ask a question, I'm giving you this opportunity to do so. And if we don't see you, I think you can just unmute and go ahead. We don't really have much time, but I also want to give you a fair opportunity. Our audience?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I greatly appreciate the presentations.
Maybe the line of command should be, I am so and so from this environment, and then you go ahead with your question. Sorry about that.
Professor Maria Matsidiso Kanjere from Teflop Graduate School of Leadership.
Okay, go ahead.
Actually, it's just a comment, and also probably to get a response from Dr. Matotoka, who is our alumni, and we are so proud of him. My question is, or probably my comment, I think we definitely need to be deliberate in as far as educating our society. To me, prevention is better than cure. What he presented, of course, those are legislation in place. and they deal with the perpetrators after the effect. But then what is it that can be done before? Other than just, campaigns, I think we need a strategy that is going to be core in addressing this gender-based violence within the society. Campaigns are just general talk, and people may think that they're not talking to them per se. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. I'm going to take another question. Yours was more of a comment, because you indicating that we are aware, we can see the campaigns, we can see the legislation, but we need some form of strategy. But I also want solutions to say, what kind of strategies do we need in order to get this going? But then I'm going to just take 2 more questions before I allow Dr. Matotoka to respond. Anyone from our audience? Unmute, introduce yourself, and go ahead. If not, I'm going to take it that Dr. Matotoka's presentation was loud and clear, and it doesn't need any interrogation, but we really appreciate those who have already interrogated the presentation. Dr. Matotoka, do you want to take this comment that we need a strategy?
Thank you, Chairperson, Program Director. We had a discussion around this to really look at what needs to be done. I mean, if you look at my presentation, you will have observed that we have an array of prescripts, policies, systems to deal with that. Now we have the NSP, which is supposed to be an instrument that really drives all the efforts by government, private sector, civil society to really deal with it. But because it's so fragmented, because there are no resources that are put even there, it becomes very much difficult to even realize the aspiration. So similarly, a strategy would work. We may propose a strategy, but a strategy that is not going to be funded, a strategy that is not going to be well-resourced, is not going to yield the necessary results. So government needs to come to the party. Private sector, we need a private sector fund where really they would also put all the efforts to ensure that whatever strategy, whatever plan that is proposed by the government as the most concrete one, it's well-resourced, because until we do so, Program Director, I'm afraid that all the aspirations will always be an elusive dream. And at the center of it, it's somebody's life, it's somebody's dignity that is being stripped away. I'll close it like that, Chairperson. Thank you.
I couldn't agree more. Ladies and gentlemen, do we still have one of you who wants to say something before I go to a close for this meeting? I don't want to close you out. I'm giving you this opportunity. I know there's a lot that we still have to digest. I know there's a lot that has been unpacked, and I'm sure that this kind of discussion needs to be taken out of this meeting. We need to engage and be more closer to one another in terms of interrogating these issues and trying to solve this pandemic, this problem, in trying to get to intervene. I'm counting up to from 3 to 1. If you're not going to ask in that specified time, I'm going to request that you forever hold your peace. On a lighter note, anyone? Going 1, going 2, going 3. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for the opportunity and the time you have set aside for us to engage with this issue. And I hope that we are going to take this discussion further. I know there's always limited time in terms of presentations. Even when you go to conferences, you're given 20 minutes, 15 minutes for presentation and 5 minutes for questions. But I mean, it would have been on a paper that you have worked for maybe for a month or two. So I believe that this kind of discussion deserves to be taken really forward. On that note, I'm going to request Professor Ricky Mkonza, Saapam Limpopo Chapter Secretary, attached to the Tshwane University of Technology, to give us a vote of thanks. Prof, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Allow me to ride on the already established protocol. Before I get to my vote of thanks speech, allow me to just acknowledge the Saapam National President, Professor Kutatso Shai. I saw him in the audience, and we appreciate your presence, Professor Shai. Having said that, Program Director, ladies and gentlemen, the South African Association for Public Association and Public Association for Public Administration and Management's vision is to lead in fostering excellence and innovation in public administration for better governance. The association serves as an essential platform for public administration experts across the African continent. Additionally, it fosters collaboration, knowledge sharing, and professional development to improve the public sector performance. And obviously, you can't talk about the performance of the state without looking at the problems that may cause the state not to fulfill its objectives. Tonight, we've just concluded a powerful and important presentation and discussion on a matter of grave national importance. The title of the presentation was South Africa's Second Pandemic, Gender-Based Violence and Femicide. How far are we as a country in eradicating the pandemic? Program Director, I know my duty is not to do a second keynote address, nor is it to perform a panelist function. Mine is to thank those that have made this night a success. I just wanted to recap the reason why we were here tonight. I'll therefore, on behalf of Saapam Limpopo chapter, and indeed on behalf of all of us here, would like to express our sincere appreciation to our distinguished guest speaker, Dr. Dennis Matotoka. Your insights, expertise, and passionate commitment to the cause have shed much needed light on the complexities of the crisis that is before us. You have challenged us, informed us, and inspired us to take action. Thank you for sharing your valuable time and knowledge with us. To our esteemed panelists, Dr. Murubulangwenya, Dr. Tshwane, Professor Morosi, and Reverend Dr. Rapakwana, we extend our heartfelt thanks. Your diverse perspectives and experiences have enriched our understanding of the multifaceted issue. Your contributions to the discussion have been invaluable in identifying the challenges and exploring potential solutions. Thank you for a thoughtful engagement and for lending your voices to this critical matter. To our engaged and attentive audience, we are incredibly grateful for your presence tonight. I know Program Director, it may sound very ironic to call the audience engaged when they've just asked one question, but I'm sure in their silence they were engaging the presentation. So we are saying thank you to our audience. Your willingness to listen, learn, and participate in the dialogue demonstrates your commitment to creating a safer and more just society. Your questions, comments, and contributions, I know this is going to be an ongoing discussion. So obviously there will be comments and contributions that are going to come, we know. And we know they are a vital part of the process, and your presence here is a testament to the fact that you are not only present, but you care about this very important issue. Finally, we would like to express our sincere gratitude to the Saapam board at national level. Thank you for allowing us to host this engagement, and I hope that you will continue to support us as a chapter. Tonight's discussion has been a sobering reminder of the long and difficult road that lies ahead, but it has also been a source of hope and inspiration, particularly with the presentation and the discussions that followed. By working together, by speaking out against GBV and F, and demanding accountability, we can make a difference. Thank you, everyone, for your commitment and for your passion and your unwavering dedication to the fight against gender-based violence and femicide. I thank you, Program Director.
Thank you so much, Prof. And from me, your program director for the night, thank you very much for listening and for being such an engaging audience. Let the public discourse continue. And this is just the beginning. And I hope from where we are, little by little, from wherever we are situated, let us contribute, and together we can make a great change. Ladies and gentlemen, have a lovely evening. Goodbye.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Good night, colleagues.
Thank you, colleagues. Good night.
Bye-bye.